928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, hey, it's Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, Consciousness, that's my YouTube page. You guys are going to have to bear with me today because I am a little bit tired because of herbal school and everything else that's been going on. So you are listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can check out our funding link and see what we have, how you can help our network, everything that we do on this station, stations, and one station, Revolution Radio. But we have lots of hosts on A or B, if this is the first time that you're listening to our network, our station. And we have tons of hosts bringing you every possible thing that you could ever imagine. I specifically love anything that has to do with, farming, soil, air, and plants, and all things, shamanism, and walking, being a good human on a good road. So, and I like to bring guests to my show that also have been doing the work. I love to have people on who are actually doing the work, finding something to sink their roots into, and do, instead of, continuing to talk about what's wrong. So I cherish a lot of every guest I've ever had on. They've been friends of mine, and if they weren't friends of mine, now they're friends of mine. So for me, it's great. I love my show, and I love the people that I talk to. So anyway, I wanted to bring, okay, so I have some of my herb stuff. It's not, a step-by-step thing, but I do these blurbs on there, kind of like my herbal adventure on my YouTube channel, as well as a lot of other content. And my YouTube channel is Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel. I try to stay out of a lot of the mainstream on multiple levels, and I just really try to put what I consider important and valuable, and the kind of things that I utilize my time for. So you can go there and check some of that out. Also, I'm getting ready to kick off. I've been trying to figure out for a long time how to teach online, and I've had a lot of failure. Had a lot of challenges with a lot of these, networks that want you to upload your, intellectual property, your classes or whatever else, and then they turn around and steal from you and lie to you and all this other stuff. So I have decided that I'm going to put on my big girl panties and I'm just going to, I have Zoom, and I'm just going to do my own classes. And I'm asking for a fee, but if people don't have that fee and they really need a change of mind and heart, you're more than welcome to take my classes. So I'm getting ready to do a phenomenology course, and that is, I started a page for it on my website, coe-llc.com. And I started a page for the mini phenomenology course. When I took biodynamic farming, I was in a place in my life that I was coming out of kind of a difficult period, and I was trying to remake myself. And so I had always done really well with growing things and having a relationship with things, and I decided that I wanted to take it one step further. So, and I was, like 38, I think, when this started, but it was when I finally had gotten healthy enough to be able to walk and maneuver. I still had a lot of problems from the brain cancer that I had, that I cured myself. I had some amazing colleagues and immunologists and doctors that were out of the box, that early on they surrendered their licenses and in an attempt to do the right thing on this planet. So I've worked in clinics with these people, mini clinics, and we've worked together to help, people. And I always did the structural and energetic medicine aspects of it, because, there are a lot of things that you cannot heal in your body if your structure is not sound. And people don't realize, like, your spine is a hydraulic pump. So I'm really hands-on with structural management and helping people to manage their structures so that they can actually heal. Anyway, so back to biodynamics. So I ended up doing permaculture stuff, and because, I was approaching 40 at that time, I'm 50 now, I was met with kind of at hand's length. And I would go places and perform. I'd outperform, most of the people that they would have on site, but I still wouldn't make those apprenticeships because they wanted people that were super young. So I kept getting these, short term, maybe a year long, whatever, apprenticeships with different kinds of things, all different kinds of things. And then I found biodynamic compost on a farm that I was in Fort Bragg. And we were a urban farm, right when you would head down into Noya Harbor. And when I was there, it was really good. There were some problems, and I wanted to go back to biodynamic. I actually got into the biodynamic program at Rudolph Steiner College, and so I moved back to Reno and would commute over the hill, taking lots of different kinds of courses at Rudolph Steiner, including the biodynamic program and a class called phenomenology that was a year long, and a lot of other stuff. So when I found biodynamic compost, it finally gave me an understanding. This particular one that this guy was making, he was if anybody's ever seen that part of the forest, it is an intense type of forest there on the coast. And this guy was kind of crazy, and he was kind of on the dangerous side. He was pretty dangerous. He just was kind kind of didn't really deal with other people well. But he would come down to our farm out of the forest and, sleep there a few days or whatever else, and manage the compost and, do a few other things. And so when he introduced me to the compost, it was like, this is when I truly understood alchemy, because in the light, I could actually, it was like black, it's really humusy and really gorgeous stuff. And had gold specks in it and all kinds of things. And when I saw those gold specks, I just really was like, finally kind of understood a process that I wanted to learn that was identical to alchemy, right? I mean, he's spinning like probably one of the most important things that we could ever make on this soil to help heal the soil and to heal everything. So he put it in my hand, and he was asking me like what I thought about it and what I could feel, and I could feel this intense energy that was warm in my hand. It like glowed, and then it had this other cool vibration that came off of it as well, and I was hooked. And so I always say that biodynamics saved my life. And a lot of people that end up in biodynamics will tell you the same thing, even though we don't follow the, for me, there was a little bit of cultism. So I don't follow a lot of the intense cultism side, but I do follow the nutrition, the study, the herbs, and definitely the compost and the aspects of creating soil that is so unbelievably nutritionally dense. And we also have to realize too that, one of the things that biodynamics really opened up for me was that we have a lot of what I call silent nutrients that are probably the most important nutrients. One is sunlight, and the presence of sunlight in the food that you eat, chlorophyll, and the presence of sunlight in the water you drink. This is how we would have, this is kind of where my shamanism and healthcare kind of like, and farming all kind of collide. But a lot of people, ancient people, teachers that I've had in shamanism, there is always has to be an aspect. Everything is alive for some reason because it's generating some kind of power, utilizing and somehow taking in energy of some sort. So our whole environment in nature are power generators, and we have a hydraulic pump called a spine that actually helps for each, like if you want to call it a chakra, it's also attached to a diaphragm in the body. So you have a diaphragm in all the areas where you would have a chakra that actually open and close. And that happens as a direct result of the spine pumping back and forth. Now, when you're small, young, before you're really stressed out, your actually tailbone moves will be on the left side, and then an hour later it'll go over to the right side because it's recalibrating itself, right? So the more injuries you have to your spine that go unhealed, the slower you get, the more disease you get, the more exhaustion and tired you get, because basically you can't generate any power and you are not consuming power from your environment. And I'm not talking about, a power trip, trampling on the backs of other people. I'm talking about raw power that's generated in our environment that a lot of ancient shamanic people use to, travel the dreaming world, which is a multidimensional type world, and take their physical bodies, not just leave in their spirit. And also could live thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So sunlight in the presence in your food, sunlight in the presence of your herbal medicines, that I've been going to herbal school, sunlight in the present of your water. So, eventually, hopefully, our waters will go back to being clean eventually, so that we can drink out of them, so that they have the sunlight, the charge, the energy charge in them. So we're not just drinking water, but we're consuming, with water that has sunlight in it, we're consuming lots of things. We're consuming a lot of minerals and metals that would come out of the water beds, across the rocks. I mean, when rocks break down, they're breaking down nutrient into the water. And we get what Victor Schallenberger's movement would call tap liquid. Even if you go to the store and you get, water filtered at the store, or the machine or the water store, you're still drinking something that's dead, because it has a lack of sunlight, has a lack of charge in it. And there's a guy named Polak, and he wrote a book called The Fourth Phase, I think, of Water. He also has videos on YouTube. People should really watch that. So sunlight can also, be present in the soil. Trees convert sunlight. Leaves can see, they have a level of photosynthesis that happens when the sun is out. So there's a level of ability that they can see through their leaves, through photosynthesis. So the silent nutrients that we're not getting, are the nutrients that are hiding that we don't know about. And so we get caught up in these supplements. Thing is, like, unless you heal your environment, you walk in your environment, there's so many things that you will not have nutritional access to. Microbes being probably the most important and most significant nutrient that every living thing needs. We need them on the outside of our bodies and our skin. We need to be absorbing them through the soil, into our bodies, through the air, through the water, and getting the microbes into our systems from all places. So microbes are at the heart of all inflammatory disease, and everything comes from inflammatory disease. Even if you have an injury, or you have chronic injury or whatever else, your chronic injury a lot of times is not healing because you have too much inflammation around the bones, and it's pushing the bones off. So the bones are completely, totally offset. And you could go in and get a chiropractor adjustment and some of these other things. I do a lot of this type of work. But, things are never really going to hold until that deep level of inflammation is healed around the bones. Sometimes your body can hold on to, tissue inflammation and bone inflammation, after a bone has been fractured or broken forever, until those types of inflammation. So all it takes is one deadly sin to our physical bodies to cause some type of inflammatory reaction wherever it started out in the body, and then a chain of events through the whole body. And then we have complete and total breakdown, because inflammation is when the microbes get out of their little cellular habitat and they run rogue through the body, and they defecate, basically, in the cell. If they defecate or whatever else in the cell where they're held, what they do is they actually break you down and rebuild you, break you down and rebuild you. They actually have a 4-stage process when they're held within the cell. Once they leave the cell collapses. The cell doesn't absorb water anymore. The cell does not hold sites for the nutrition or metabolic stuff. They don't hold air or water or metabolic stuff anymore, and they become really sticky and they stick together. And people can have an artery heart attack, not because of plaque, but because they have inflammation. They have high inflammation, and the red cells are clogging. And at some point, you slow down, you're tired, you don't have very high oxygen levels. This is inflammation at the most serious point. But you can have inflammation all over the body. You may have infections that you have parts of them are still dormant. You may have injuries that you haven't dealt with. You may have autoimmune system type diseases derived from, vaccines and other stuff. And without the microbes being replenished in your system, the other microbes don't really know to go back into the cell. They don't really know how to go back to being helpful. So they're in a chronic state of degeneration, and what they're doing is 100% inflammation is the beginning of the complete entire breaking down of your whole body, and the microbes are involved in it. And then if that wasn't bad enough, because microbes running amok create higher bad acids in the body and in the tissues, and so then what the body has to do is it has to start siphoning the calcium out of the bones. And this is the same thing as in farming. So when I was doing composting and stuff, it blew me away, like how similar dirt and composting is the same kind of like microbial process that the body makes. So say, for example, this one farm that I got onto, the farmer, hadn't had time to clean the night pen for a long time, and that's pretty normal. And so there was probably like about a good 5 feet of, straw and animal waste and stuff like that. It didn't really smell. We had other things in there that they could actually lay on and stuff like that. But when I got to the farm, I actually spent 3 weeks cleaning it out. So, I would dig out all the straw. It was all compacted with everything. But once I started removing the straw, you could smell like the, heavy acids. And then there was tons of bugs, as you would break apart the stuff and you wheelbarrow it up, and we put it into like a giant compost to break it down. But the stench was really strong. The bugs were really intense because of the acid level. And the problem is that it wasn't really being broken down underneath like it should because of the acid content, like animal urine, and just the whole how heavy it was in the acid compounds. So when it hits to a point where, it's heavy acid, it's really not breaking down that great. And so we have to bring it down just a little bit. So cool it down just a little bit so that it'll neutralize, and then it can actually go into a really fast breaking down process. So digging it out, I'd have to like fight these bugs and everything. And then I went into the shed and they had some powdered lime. And I realized like this is calcium. So I went back in there and I was taking it, and as I was tearing up, all of the old straw and everything else out of there, I would actually put the powdered lime on the ground, and it instantaneously, even though the ground was not wet, it neutralized. The bugs were gone. It sweetened the air, sweetened the smell, sweetened the soil, and it stopped the negative, acid process. And so that's what happens in our bodies, is that when we reach too high of acid levels, the body actually pulls the calcium out of the bones. It has nowhere else to get it because we're not really getting it in our diet. I mean, you can go down to the grocery store and, think that you're getting fresh, produce, and say lettuce, loses all of its nutritional value in 3 days, even organic. This is why I advocate that people really should grow food. They really should grow at least, 20% of their annual diet. It's super easy to do. Even in the wintertime, cold frames work exceptionally well. And the other thing, too, is the microbes. So I was at the Whole Foods the other day, and they have lettuce, in packages that says something like organic, mixed greens, washed 6 times. And I'm like, Well, they washed all the B vitamins and the bacteria off that you need for your body to help your body fight, certain things in the world. And also, people don't realize B12 is a bacteria. And so they're washing all the B12 off. And then they're washing all the microbes off, because microbes are really, really sensitive and they die easily. And so we are living, on a pretty sterile planet at this point. And I always tell people about this great story about, actually, I was thinking about two things all of a sudden. But Reuben, I think his last name is Reuben, the Maker's Diet, and he talks about this guy was like dying of every disease. His family were like famous doctors on the East Coast, blah, 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 blah. He had like 5 serious diseases. I think one of them was Hodgkin's. He was like 6'2" and weighed like 80 pounds, been eaten away by the microbes because they're breaking him down. Because they're in a bad process. They're in a non-containment. And when they're in non-containment, they don't know what to do. And so they go to their, best strategy, which is break everything down into compost. Get rid of it. But it literally sat on a beach house and ate, soil that's made by people in Israel that they eat to cure every type of disease there is. So he ate basically dirt, soil, and in 6 months he was completely cured of everything. And then he went on to start a company called Beyond Organic, but I don't think it did very well because people didn't really understand what he was trying to do for them, right? So anyway, we have to have those microbes in our system so that the microbes can replenish themselves. And a lot of people don't know, and I just know this because I've worked with a lot of people, and I've done a lot of work with these medicines. The pleomorphics, which were based out of Germany. Every country had its own way of doing bacterial or microbial types of medicines. And the pleomorphics, one of the companies, closed a while back. And also, I believe that the FDA has banned all pleomorphics in the United States, which is totally ludicrous. It's unbelievable what these products can do, and they're totally not dangerous. What they do is they say, for example, you have a fungus overgrowth. You probably would take a black label pleomorphic, which are microbes that deal with intense fungus and black mold kind of stuff. And these are the good side of the black mold, when it was positive and where it was at before. And so you take those microbes and eventually it will change the black mold or bad fungus, back into something good, which gets those microbes back into the containment field, into the cell, working the positive 4-step process, not just the one process of breaking you down. So in Germany, they've had pleomorphics for super, super long time. It's one of the things that I use to cure my brain cancer, but not so much to cure my brain cancer, but to fix the microbes in the areas where I had problems, that my body couldn't actually heal my brain cancer. So I took a lot of immune enhancer stuff that I used to get out of this. They had this place in San Francisco where you could get lots of herbs and all kinds of different products from all over the world. And so I used to get this immune enhancer stuff. The guy down there, I got a lot of my pleomorphics from him. And so I use the pleomorphics, the microbial medicines, to clean up and cure the things that were long-term. For example, I had some really bad old sinus stuff that, never quite was cleared up, had stuff in my ears. I had some dental stuff. I had some candida. And, I felt like I was the healthiest I was. I was running, mini triathlons. I was climbing. I was massive, huge rock climber indoors and outdoors. I was 115 pounds and I was burly. And I felt great. I was running almost every day. And I wasn't. That's when my brain cancer hit me, because I was more on the health pharmaceutical side, supplement bars, protein powders, and a lot of these other things. I didn't realize, like, because I was heating my body up so much all the time through a lot of exercise, that this was not helping the microbes in my system. It was, creating a hot environment for them, which is, they like to keep things kind of on the neutral level on all levels. And I wasn't also putting new microbes into my body. So my body wasn't able to actually heal the underlying factors of why my body couldn't kick in and start healing my brain cancer. So I used the pleomorphics to clear it all up. I even had, stuff in my colon, all kinds of, other underlying issues that needed to be taken care of with all the different types of pleomorphics, which return, the microbes in those areas that were breaking down into the 4-step positive microbial process back into the containment field, where they like it, nice and comfy and tucked in. So in Russia, they have things called flanges. And this is a lot of stuff that people don't realize, because, even on the internet, so much of the alternative medicine information is like zero. It's just like no longer available. All the people that I've studied with and worked alongside with, most of them are dead. Because they were old. And I mean, they continued to work until they couldn't work anymore to like help people and save people. And all their information like died with them, which is really, really a sad thing. And a lot of the alternative medicine information that's on the net is just really incomplete. It doesn't really give you, all the choices that you might need. But the phalanges, they're really cool. They scare me a little bit, but they're pretty cool. So what was happening is that, in Russia, they'd have these, plagues or things that would hit, flus, viruses, MERS, whatever type of stuff, where they have these like, mini outbreaks of stuff. So what the scientists did, and I don't know if they're actually still doing flanges anymore. I know that they have like a huge stockpile still of all of them that they've ever made medicine for, using itself, right? The bacteria itself, using the viral agent itself. They would turn it into a medicine immediately and be able to treat whatever was going on in Russia. So what they did was they had this medical center that was literally downtown. And there was a sewage like runoff area. And what they would do is they would collect actually sewage samples, and their scientists would look through them and pick up and see if there was anything new bacterial in them that they could actually be prepared for the next, outbreak of whatever it's going to be. And then they would put it on the shelf once they identified it as something totally new that they didn't have in their collection. They would put it on the shelf and archive it, so it was there if that bacteria went, into a bad process, like a bad microbial process, right? And then they could make a medicine from it instantly, and they could give all the people inoculations so that it wouldn't continue on. But these are kind of like natural things that countries have been using for a really, really long time, other than, antibiotics. And the U.S. is probably the most prolific antibiotic making and using country, out of probably the entire world. We give them to everything. We give antibiotics to every possible thing that we can give antibiotics to. And we wonder why we have, crazy things like a lot of these, strep infections and staph infections and all these other things that are running rampant in the medical community, and are, eventually could run rampant, in our environment. And hygiene, is super important to a lot of that. Because, if you're in a bad hygiene situation, well, what kind of microbes are you involved in? What kind of microbes are you surrounded by? Well, you're in the breakdown ones, right? Breaking down, not building up. So in the soil, the microbes are invisible and they go into your body. They can go in through your skin. They can, just like parasites can, unfortunately, but they can come. You can breathe them in. You can be out in the soil, tending your soil, and dust kick up and breathe that stuff in. You can drink it in the water on your property. And when you're, microbial rich, I just got an opportunity this last, not this weekend, but last weekend at my, I'm taking a herbal medicine course, and I'm taking it from a woman who's been teaching just alone. She's been teaching for 47 years. She's amazing. And she, during the, time period that we're there on location for school once a month, one of the days we always take like a walk out in nature somewhere. And this is in the Grass Valley area. But we got to go to this last time. We had a man named Grayson who's native, who was doing storytelling and stuff about this forest area that we walked into. And we were graced with being able to walk into what's called a climax forest, a climax area, which means that anything that may have helped to build up the climate forest while it was in transition, once the forest could sustain itself, would kick out and get rid of. And this is like how a healthy body would be like this climax forest. If body in perfect balance with the water and the soil and the microbes and the sunlight and the shade and all of these components working together, all the animals and everything else, into this climax forest, where this climax forest is in perfect condition. It needs nothing. It takes care of every possible thing that it needs, and anything that would have been invasive to it, the forest, this area, this land may have used it until it was no longer good for, the sustainability in the forest and everything, and it would get rid of it, push it to the outside. So this is like what microbes do. If your body's in a climax condition where it's super healthy, it can use whatever, and it can change it into like the 4 processes. So it can take something like really, really bad that infiltrates the system and actually digest it and turn it into something really good that's reusable for the body, under a perfect sustainable condition. So your body is like that. I mean, it's not really a whole lot different. And we need to spend more time in places where it's microbial rich, so that we're breathing in, all this type of environment. So we're getting new microbes into our system, because otherwise there's no place that you can go to get microbes in your system. I mean, because if you're buying food and you cook that food, okay, now you just sterilized it, you killed the microbes in it. And there's this book, Lenny knows this book too. And I read it a super long time ago, and this is where it really kicked it in for plants for me. I forget what it's called. It was written by a guy, Lenny will probably type it on. It was written by a guy who did the lie detector test. He was one of the original people that worked with the lie detector test. And when he retired from doing people, he he decided he was going to use it on plants. Just, he had this huge plant in his mad scientist, area. And so he started, he put it on the big plant just to see changes in his environment or whatever else. And it would be recorded on, the lie detector. So he left the lie detector on all the time so that he could, see this changes, in this big plant that was in his lab area. And he became really shocked about that people would slam doors or people would come in yelling, and the plant would react like, and the little arm on the lie detector is like going crazy. And so he started to realize, like, plants have this consciousness. And then he would try to fake the plant out he'd falsely threaten the plant, and it would know that he was, making it up, so it wouldn't respond. But then if he really like got mad, the plant would really respond. But there was this one part of the book where he talks about everything in the environment is starting to respond now, right? Because he's listening, right? And it's all responding on this lie detector test and these lie detector machines that he has like everywhere, that he's monitoring all the plants and the environment and just seeing, how everything's reacting, even though he wouldn't notice that they're reacting that way if he didn't have the lie detector machine. Well, at one point he actually takes like a hot pot of water and he pours it down the drain. And all of a sudden, the lie detector tests all going crazy. Everything's going nuts. And then what he does is he can't figure out what's going on in there. And I think he takes a sample or a swab or something like that, or somehow is led down the path of realizing that all these microbes lived in that drain, right? And that this is like the microbes were tending, living in there and tending, to those areas, breaking things down, living in there. And every time he pours down something hot, he's actually killing them. And they were starting to react because, it was harming them. I know this is pretty far-fetched for some people, but, we have to wonder like how microbes are affected in our own body, and, how stress, abuse, especially mental and emotional abuse that we know is real, and how the microbes could respond in our systems, and reason why we break down and we get sick. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here we go. It's The Secret Life of Plants. I knew Lenny would remember because we've talked about this book before. The Secret Life of Plants, Peter Tompkins and Christopher Bird. Anyway, I highly, you could probably get it used for cheap. It is such a unbelievably amazing book that starts to change your scope of understanding of the world around you. The one that, you don't think matters because you don't really see it. You don't really hear from it, And these are the things that are really important to our bodies, the microbes, and where they live and how they interact with us. And thinking about it this way, there's almost every scientific health study that's ever done between kids that live in cities and kids that live out in farms. And I mean, allergies, people who live off the land and who are around all the different microbes and the plants and everything else have a, awesome immune system. And why is that? Because they're exposed to all these microbes and their bodies are getting replenished with microbes constantly. And kids in cities have no access to microbes, and their environment is so unbelievably sterile. And so it's the microbes that we really have to start considering, for keeping, the health balance. And that's a secret nutrient, just like sunlight, that needs to be in everything. So those are my two big, and also the bacteria on the plants. And you can only get those and strong microbes if you're growing your own food and you go out and you get it, you chop it up, you put it in a bowl and you eat it raw. You've got all those beautiful microbes and you've got all those bacterias, and it's all going into your body to refortify your body and to give your body data and information, downloading all what's going on in your environment, and also it's downloading the processes that the microbes are using in order to deal with the environment. So, take a look at honey. And the other thing too, honey doesn't really work if you kill all the microbes in it. If you're going to take it to help your immune system, you have to eat it raw. I mean, even the blades in a blender, you want to put it in a smoothie, those blades will heat up enough that it will kill the microbial mass in the food. So, I mean, this is why this is kind of like the bottom line of what raw food is about. And dietary wise, I always tell people it's better if you do have to buy stuff in stores, it's better not to, meat, that's a whole other thing, but, vegetables and fruits, best not to cook them as much as possible, not to, kill everything in them and try to eat them as close to the plant as possible. And one of the yogis that I read his book on diet always made perfect sense to me. Always eat stuff that has a lot of water, because if it has a lot of water, it has sunlight in it, and it has, microbes in it, and it still has a lot of this silent nutrient in it. And, and all this water goes into your system too and helps your body. So always eat, a lot of fruit and vegetables, things that have, the water, the microbes, and everything else, and you need it, the sunlight. Okay, so, wow, I just was thinking how much I love that book. I should go back and reread it, The Secret Lives of Plants. It's one of those books that's pretty fun. Probably could pick up a whole bunch of new stuff out of it. All right, so Rudolf Steiner, going back to biodynamics school, saved my life. There was one class in particular that really saved my life at Steiner College, and that class was called Phenomenology. I took it for a year. It was one 9-hour class once a month. It was an intense day, probably. Oh, sounds like we have some trouble. So I would come to that class, and I would sit through the whole class, and then I would have to drive home 3 hours to Reno. And usually every time, I had to make that trip home, I would cry hysterically. There were so many things that happened to me during, going to biodynamic school, but mostly going through also that year of phenomenology courses, the course, and, studying plants kind of at a whole different level. And mostly I took phenomenology so that I would be able to look at the, eventually when I had land and I'm restoring it and I'm doing some full-scale biodynamic farming. I have a project. I'll be doing combat veterans on my land, apprenticeships for 2 years. And so, but I really wanted to be able to scientifically look at my environment and to figure out what's wrong. And so that I could fix it or restore it or give it, what it needed and help it out, kind of in a pretty natural way. So that was the number one reason I took the phenomenology, because I kind of understood it more as kind of a science. A spiritual approach to science is basically scientific, collection of data and understanding. So, and so that's why I took it. But I ended up forever changing me how I looked at the world outside of myself. It brought in, Victor Schallenberger's work on a lot of different levels. It brought in Steiner's work. It brought in, all these amazing, probably older scientists that, books and stuff are about, where they actually sat with the stuff and they contemplated it, right? They had a relationship with it. They knew it. And Steiner has this really great meditation that you can use for everything, but I think it's in this book called How to Know Higher Worlds, I think is what it's in there. But it talks about the steps of the process of working with a plant. And so you see the seed in your mind, you plant the seed, and then you watch everything grow. You watch it start to sprout, and then it grows roots, and then it grows the stalk, it grows the leaves, it does this, it does that, into the flower, until the process, and then it's broken back down from the top back to the seed. And you have to kind of know, what plants you're working with. You kind of have to have like a visual idea for this to work on both sides of your brain, in both hemispheres, both brains, because you have two brains. You don't have a brain. And then you have the electrical charges that go through both sides of the brain that actually make the brains interact. but in order to really make that meditation work, you also have to do the left hemisphere stuff, which is actually look at the seeds, look at what the plant looks like, maybe even grow it, so that you have like a full understanding of what that looks like. I've been working with mullein root for like 10 years. I mean, mullein for like 10 years. Never have worked with the root until recently when I decided I'm going to do a tissue and bone inflammation tincture. And I was blown away about the roots, when I was digging these plants up. And of course, I used the whole top as well. But the roots were just a trip. And so I wouldn't have that great of, I don't really know that plant real well. So I've been dealing with it 10 years and I knew nothing about its roots or what its roots look like because I never really had a need to dig it up and take a look. So if I was doing my meditation, in my mind from seed to flower and then breaking it back down to seed, I would be missing the root, though I would be missing a whole part of the structure. So one of the things that meditation taught me to do in phenomenology was to really clearly look at things, clearly smell them, clearly, be present and be with things in my world. And it really also helped me to problem solve. Now, when I have a situation, I can sit back and I can decide if I have all the pieces or not. And if I don't have all the pieces for my full puzzle, I can kick back or I can ask more questions and I can bring that information in before I make a decision. And I feel like a lot of people are lacking or missing in the ability to kind of be able to look at something as whole as possible and then be able to make a decision about it. So now, I have all the components, my left side, my left hemisphere knows it can feel the leaves, right? It can see the leaves and the size of the leaves. I know how sunlight maybe looks when it shines through the leaf. Now I know what the root looks like. I've known what the seeds look like for a long time. So now I'm in the process of, after 10 years, I can fully understand the whole left hemisphere side, all the technical parts of the mullein plant. But then I bring it into the spiritual part, into the right hemisphere, and I build it from the seed up and then break it down. So I create a whole different level of understanding that the right hemisphere can understand, because the right hemisphere really likes symbol. It likes more of the visual in order to figure out something or understand it and then be able to problem solve. And so you have this combination in phenomenology that really works the left and the right hemisphere, and has processes that do both. And so anyway, with the school thing, I'm really excited about these phenomenology classes that I'm going to be doing. They're mini. And I don't want to step on anyone's toes in any of the Steiner stuff. I'm just going to be bringing things that I think are important. And like I said, it's on my website, coe-llc.com. Should say phenomenology mini classes or something like that. And I'm going to do them for 6 months. And there'll be 2 classes on the same thing every month. So every 2 weeks, there'll probably be a class. So that way we can study whatever we're studying. I think flowers are going to be the first class. And then, and there's a lot of interaction stuff. So even though it's online and Zoom, I can do 25 people by video. So make sure that you get signed up for that, and go to the page and it can tell you all about that. But phenomenology really saved my life at a time where I really needed a really serious way to kind of like change my belief systems. And it really led me back towards, nature. It really led me back to the creator. And it really led me back to, like a deeper level understanding of what co-creating is. And for me, co-creating is that, the creation at some point here would have been perfect. just like that climax forest. Anastasia books, she talks about a lot of her environment, in those ways as well. And that, we're supposed to go out there and see what's going on and learn from all those aspects. I mean, a lot of my Native teachers have talked to me a lot about, the 7 nations that came here before there were any kind of humanoids. And I do believe that we're experimental. We kind of live in a movie set, and we're allowed to do whatever we choose to do, but eventually they find out ways to eradicate us, and like start again. So I do highly believe in that, but I believe that nature is the key, and I believe that it's the key to understanding all things spiritual, and yourself as a co-creator, and the creation that was established. You have the creator who created all things, and I think you go to areas on this earth where there is purity, where it's imperfection, which they're very small and limited areas, and you start to learn that you're the destroyer of creation, as the whole manifestation. Everything that we do outside of those climax forests or those special or sacred areas, we're working against them and we're destroying them. And so you think about that on a level like the creator, and it's, be right back. Commercial. It's the end of you.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zerloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B, exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
Extendivite really works. Just listen to what some people have to say.
Several years ago, I was developing a very severe situation. I called it my flippy heart. It was doing not good things, and I did not want to go to a medical doctor because I just knew they would give me a cover-up pill. I didn't want to get onto that sort of thing at all. When I learned it was garlic and cayenne is a healer. It is a wonderful herb. I said, I think I'm onto something here. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be without it. It did wonderful things for me.
Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid. Call now. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. Anyway, I am back for the second hour, and I'm just kind of like blabbing along today, just about a lot of different thoughts. And I have been so busy with herbal school that I've kind of let me lax on getting, people scheduled for being a guest, and it's probably a good thing every once in a while to do your own show. Maybe not. Anyway, so I just wanted to kind of go back to, maybe what I was talking about before the end of the first hour, which is creation, co-creation, and being a co-creator. And before I do that, though, we're Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and I'm carrying stones and digging holes on Revolution Radio. And you can go to the website and look under funding and find out all kinds of ways that you can fund us. And we do have seeds. Buy some seeds, grow some seeds, get Rudolf Steiner's book, How to Know Higher Worlds, do the meditations, watch your plants grow, take my phenomenology classes and make a science out of it, growing those seeds that you get from Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com in our funding area. Also, while you're at Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, you can look me up, and you can go to schedule, click on schedule A, click on the schedule A, and then scroll down to the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then you will see a big bee with a flower and pollen on its legs, and click on that, and there's some information about the show and me, and there's also contact information there if you want to contact me. So, yeah, and then also, please visit my YouTube channel for some of my, gardening exploration, herbal exploration, and that's Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel. All right. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about, and, a lot of things that I talk about are my observations, my experiences, what I've learned, people that I've studied with, how I've pieced it all together, that works best for me, or, that fits into kind of my understanding, my little niche in the world. And so one of the things that, going back to doing biodynamics and especially being and phenomenology classes and stuff like that is seeing my part in what, as a co-creator and what that co-creation is. And when I go into a climax forest and I realize, under perfect conditions, the planet doesn't need me at all, that I'm a violator, I'm a parasite, because even the fact that I might walk down a trail through that area, I'm damaging things with my feet. I'm introducing things into that environment that are not natural and that don't belong in that environment, and in some cases are harmful to that environment. And that could include how I feel. Those, vibrations or frequencies that I'm transmitting through chemicals that I'm making in my body. Because people don't realize, the reason why you are what you think, you are what you feel, and people and other things can feel those things, is because it's the actual chemical. So you have the thought, the reoccurring thoughts, And then your brain creates a chemical. Your brain can create probably all the chemicals that are on this planet and more. So you have a thought, which, say, for example, we'll call it depression. And you have this thought all the time, and you have all the thoughts that make up your depression. My childhood, my this, my that, this happened to me, blah, blah, this is going on now. I'm just so depressed, I can't move forward. So what happens is eventually your brain starts to create a chemical called depression. And so everyone's depression is going to be a little bit different because we're all biologically different. So we may all have the same kind of symptoms that, relate to a common word used as depression, but not everybody's depression is going to be the same because everybody has different chemistry. We all eat different things. We all drink different water. Just the fact that the chemical makeups in our body from the toxic environment can create different kinds of chemicals. So everybody would be different. You might have the same symptoms of depression, but the chemical makeup that's uniquely you is going to be different. This is why not every certain things work across the board for pain in pharmaceuticals. Not everything can work across the board for depression because everybody has a unique chemical makeup to start off with before they start producing similar symptomatic chemical reactions in their body. So you have this, overcurring depression. And what happens is that your brain starts to create a chemical called depression, which is like any other chemical that you might stick in your body. And it could be like the same kind of chemical that you smoke pot or you drink alcohol or chemical combinations that are happening within your body or, heroin or whatever else, right? So your body is producing this chemical. And then what happens is once the brain produces the chemical, it releases it into the body through your hormonal system, your hormonal structures called peptides. And then they flush through your system and your cells have portholes for everything. Your cells have portholes for water, for food, for waste, for, to traffic waste back to areas that have it cleaned up. They have portholes for nutrient. They have portholes for these different chemicals. This is why, when you're hormonally imbalanced or you're super, super emotional, why it's so significant and why it's so difficult and why it's so hard to get over, because it's like a drug. Your body is producing a drug, and then your body, what happens is gets addicted to the drug. So, for example, if you are like in depression all the time and you're producing your own unique special formula of that, and it's going through your body into your cells, your 50,000 trillion cells, because this is how your brain communicates to what's going on in your environment to the world, to your cells, and everything else that's going on in your body is through peptides, through chemicals that cause hormone fluctuations. And this is how it gets you to react to things, you're super emotional about something because it's triggering something from your past. And this could be, a place where you have blocked health. So your body's trying to help you recognize that under healthy conditions. But under negative ones, if you've been depressed and you've been focused in on depression for a really long time, and the more that happens, the more addicted you're becoming to depression. Because your body is creating this, chemical compound called depression. It's flushing through your body and it's washing your body and cells. And I've read some articles in Science that were talking about how your body gets to a point where, hold on, we have trouble. we have the djinn on the porch barking at the dog that's down below and running around like a crazy lady with her fur up. It's like a game. The dog downstairs and her. Anyway, so she's creating a chemical compound in her brain called excitement. The thrill and the excitement and she's addicted to it. Her and that dog are both addicted to it. So you have the depression that's being created. So in science, these articles that I read said that it gets to where the cells will no longer have ports for water, metabolic, food, air, any other thing, and they will just only have ports that are open for the constant addictive chemical that you're producing in your own brain. So when you go out, so all this goes into feeling, and then what it does is once the chemicals hit the cells and recharges the cells with, say, depression, the peptides flow through the body, you're on a real downer, and you are really creating some depression chemicals, and the peptides are being released into your cells, and your cells are absorbing a ton of it. Well, what'll happen is that that's the frequency that you're sending out. So now it's an electrical vibration that's in your body that's kind of being signaled out, like you're an antenna. You receive and send signals. And then on top of it, because of the emotional component, now you have emotional behavior that's going along with it. And then thirdly, and most importantly, is that your body creates a smell. So anywhere you go, and I know this from working with animals, if I'm having a really off day, and I have to go out and milk a cow, the cow will look at me like several times, like, and maybe even be a little fussy before I even touch her. And I realize it's because she's picking up on a smell of stress, that I might be having a stressful day, and it's making her stressed out because of the smell that's being released. So all of the chemicals that you're making, because they turn into hormones, they'll also turn into smells. So say you walk into that climax forest, and you are producing, let's say you are an entitled, hey, over here. Let's say that you're an entitled, person, and you have predatorial behavior, right? And you walk into a forest and you're like emanating everything of entitlement, self-importance, and predatorial behavior. You're going to be releasing a chemical makeup smell. You're going to be releasing a frequency. And everything in that forest or that pristine area is going to freak out, because the one thing that they don't want is predatory, right? They're all cautious. They're all warning. The trees don't want anything predatory. The plants don't want anything predatory. The birds don't want anything predatory. And one of the things that I realized, walking into this climax forest, is we went in there as a group for Grayson, the native guy, to actually talk to us about the forest and native stories. And it was a really beautiful day. It was a really incredible, beautiful day walking through there. But when we walked in, no birds made any noise, and even the insects were few and far between. And I thought that was really interesting. But it wasn't until a majority of us had walked out of the forest, and then I heard the birds start to talk, right? And I heard all the things like come back to life. And so we were emitting signals, even though we were trying to be, highly evolved and spiritual and caring, and not trying to overly trespass hard, and all these other things, and trying to, have a higher vibration and all this other stuff. We still seriously impacted how that forest and that area was relating to us. It actually didn't want to relate to us because it didn't really like the signals, the smells, and the feelings, probably that it was getting from us. So when they say that your mind is creating, kind of your reality, it's more like it's creating your emotions, it's creating your health, but it's not really creating your reality. What it is it's forcing you to be a certain way in your reality, and then you're going to get the reaction from the outside world to your reality. And if you're not functioning in a cleaner way, let's just say that, cleaning up your chemical toxic leak, your toxic vehicle that you're driving in, then the world isn't going to respond really well. And also the thing is that this is one of the big things that I've really been learning lately with, going out and while crafting herbal medicine, is that having taken a lot of these classes before, dealing with the environment, understanding my relationship to the environment as a co-creator, also, makes me have to work a little bit harder to make my medicines. And now I look at things a lot differently. I have friends of mine who are kind of in the naturopathic, homeopathic thing, and they, will order all their medicines from somebody else and put them on a shelf. They'll backstock for like a year. And I think every person that walks into that building is carrying, some kind of, the reason why they're going to those places is because they're a toxic waste dump. They're a toxic thinking dump. They're a toxic feeling dump. They're a toxic smell and, whatever is coming off of them as a direct result of the things that they think in their mind and the chemicals that they're creating. So they're impacting all those medicines that you have up on those shelves. And those homeopathic people and naturopathic people, the ones that don't have a relationship to those medicines, they don't go out into the environment. If a lot of these people went out into the environment, it would dawn on them why everyone is sick. Because there isn't any climax environment. There isn't any microbial rich environments. Everything is dying because of the sterility, which means that we're dying because of the sterility. So for me, going out and making medicines is like a really big deal because I have to connect. I do like meditations and whatever else. Say I'm going to do a mullein root tincture. And mullein is a character. Recently, I've gotten to know mullein, but mullein is quite the character. And so I get the signal. I tell the plant, kind of on an energetic level, mental level, like these are the days that I'm going to come. I'm looking to come and find you and collect you, and so I'll give them a time, kind of a mental time frame of when that can happen, and then I'm going to make sure that during those time frames that I've selected, that I'm not putting anything else into my day. My day is going to be cleared of my toxic waste dump on all levels so that I can actually be as clear as possible to go out and meet the right exact plants that I need to collect in a good way, to learn from, and to make medicines for my clients. And so then the plant will, that night I'll have a dream, or I'll wake up in the morning and I'll know that the plant is ready. And since I don't have anything added onto my day and I'm not talking to anyone on the phone, I'm not doing anything, I get up, have a happy morning, get into my meet and greet with my plant, and I head out the door. And then I go on the journey and find the right plants and then, collect them. And then I spend the rest of the day processing them, cleaning them, or if I'm going to dry and hang them for future medicine, I'm going to make a tincture out of them. I'm going to make a balm salve out of them. And my particular arena that I'm doing with herbal medicine, I've talked to my teacher about this, is that, I'm not into making lip balms and any of that kind of stuff. I have clients that have raging pain. From lots of different things, from autoimmune system disease to chronic injury, to stressful life that's happened to them. And so I want to make sure that all the plant medicines that I'm working with deal with inflammation, pain, autoimmune system disease, the bones, tendons, ligaments. And so, I'm kind of working on creating a whole product line that is all that I that I focus in on and do, right? So it's interesting, when I find one plant, it tells me about another one, because I'm working with them I'm not bringing my toxic waste dump. I'm not looking for them to save me. I'm looking at them to be my friend and my teachers and mentors, and to help me, to learn how to utilize their medicine. One thing too is, going into these forests and going on these walks, during every time I go back to herbal medicine school through the summer. I can't believe people actually starve to death. I'm shocked every time I go into those areas. Every time my teacher pulls off a leaf or whatever else, or anything else that's edible or it's medicinal, I'm just sticking that thing in my mouth. I can't believe how much food is in there, and how much, nature grows it, and how many things we don't eat. We don't eat leaves. People don't like, you can eat a zucchini leaf. You could eat a squash leaf. You can eat maple leaves, it turns out, right? There's so many things that we just don't eat in the environment that are around us, that have that are not being hybrided, they're not being monocultured, they're growing exactly where they need to grow and the way that they need to grow. And the other thing too is, the other thing about, plant medicines is that the plants are teaching me is that it might be the same plant that's on the river that I might find out in the desert with no location of water. And they have power. They have two different types of distinct power. So say I'm trying to work with inflammation, and I have people that the type of inflammation that they're under or undergoing is a lot of fluid retention. Maybe they have inflammatory stuff that's going on with the heart. They're maybe even having inflammatory stuff that's going on with maybe their urinary tracts. And that plant may be able to help them. And so, utilizing the one that has the closest to the water, because I know that it also has this direct relationship to the water. So it knows how much water it needs, how much water it doesn't need, and it may actually help in the body trying to figure out what the neutral balance is with the inflammation and how much water it's holding. And also tighten up the areas of the body that need to be tightened up, the organs and whatever else, so that it actually could clean the excess fluid out. Or let's say it's the same plant in the desert, and the desert one has a lot to do with, it has to save all the water in a good way in its cells whenever it rains. So it has a different kind of process that I can use for inflammation. Say I have somebody that is having some kind of microbial problem, and their cells are not retaining water. They're still super dehydrated. Their blood is still really dark and really thick, and their blood is not getting enough water. It's not thinning itself out. So I could use this desert type of inflammatory plant, same one that was on the river, but use this one because its medicine inside of itself knows how to get the cells in itself to retain water. So I could use that plant to help this person with that type of inflammation, like a blood inflammation where the blood is too thick, because I can teach the cells from the body through that plant medicine not only how to take down that inflammation, but also to retain more water in the cells so that there's less, blood inflammation. So one of the things about, if we want to be healthy, and we want to be healthy on all these levels, we have to return back to a place where we are operating in full co-creation. And this is just my opinion, which means that we have to be the servants of nature and be the servants of the beings that live in nature that are our teachers, because we are not going to have any kind of real health. We're not going to be able to have good air or soil or water, in the next 500 years, if we don't actually start working alongside in nature and rehabilitating nature in a co-creative way, and making it more and more solid spots and in areas. There's another nutrient that people don't get, and that's carbon, positive carbon. And this is why people can have arthritis and other stuff, and tendon and ligament problems, carpal tunnel and all this other stuff, and have this atrocious pain. You could undergo having arthritis and all this other stuff and not have the treacherous pain if you had enough carbon in your system. And there are I think Russia is producing carbon 60 or something like that, but you could use castor oil packs, for certain areas to get carbon forced down back into the structure of the body to majorly reduce the pain. But carbon is positive. We're in negative carbon all the time, right? We're in another breakdown type stuff. If you're living in a city, you're around cars, you're around all this other stuff, it's all negative carbon. Positive carbon is like this climax forest or land, or areas where, nature is growing and the air is a little bit clearer, the soil is better, and it's producing carbon. It's producing positive carbon, which actually can create sort of a healthy environment around you. And as the negative carbon falls into those areas, like it's been blown in from other places, your positive carbon can eat it up, no problem. But without carbon, we also have a lot more severe physical pain, especially where it feels like bone pain. So there are a lot of things about nature that no matter what our future looks like, and I hear a lot of these people talking about these health machines. I've been around these health machines 25 years. I mean, a lot of them, there's nothing new. And yeah, in some people, in some cases, it could help, heal hairline fracture. It can eliminate a disease or whatever else. But this is the thing. The reason that you got what you got was because your environment sucks. And the environments that you're living in suck. And the environments on the planet suck. And the chemtrails and everything else that's killing our environment and sterilizing our environment is doing the same thing to us. So what is going to be the difference for being able to have long-term health? It's these silent nutrients that you're going to need. It's the sunlight in the water, charging the water. It's the sunlight eating in the food, eating it directly, or making plant medicines from it directly. It is, the microbial mass in the soil and going into your body. It's the positive carbon in these natural, beautiful environments that your body's absorbing. I read a book about 15 years ago that talked about how your skin could actually absorb a liter of water a day, right? So if you're living in a desert climate or whatever else, and you're taking a shower in chlorine water, and that's all your skin has to absorb itself into itself. I mean, you think about this for a minute, everything around you is completely 110%. And the other thing too is microwave radiation, Wi-Fi, cell phones, computers, kill microbes. They heat up your body and they kill the microbes. And they so totally destroy the microbes that they're not even remotely the same. I mean, just do a microwave cooker experiment and see what happens. And that's what's happening to us in the environment. Because microbes are so sensitive. So we're literally, sterilizing ourselves with almost every possible thing that's going on in our environment that we relate to on a daily basis. And we have to really get back to nature, and we have to really get away from a lot of these other things. And it's choice. It's hard too because, money is involved in it. I think, a lot if people, weren't having to pay money and didn't have mortgages and didn't have all this other stuff, could really make a lot of other choices. And, is it hard to live in your car? Hell yeah, it's hard to live in your car. Is it hard to, make choices to do the right work and the right thing, and starve. Oh yeah, it's super difficult. There are days where you just beat yourself over the head, but at this point in my life, not to be hoity-toity, but I've been kind of pretty much living, in and out of my car, mostly in, since 2006. And I had a business partner that had been murdered. A year before that, a really close friend of mine was murdered. So it kind of like started it off. And really haven't been able, to really get back on my feet. And then, having gone through some serious attacks by the state with my private practice for absolutely positively no reason. I think it was because I was busy, that they didn't really like that a whole lot. They felt like it was taking away from them. Anyway, had to suffer through that for 3 years until they, pretty much discredited me. But I'm just kind of at the point in my life where, not that I'm choosing to live in poverty, but there are not other solutions for me. And there's just no possible way that I could go back to being involved in the harm that I've been in as far as a co-creator. So I was creating against. I wasn't even in co-creation with nature or creator and the creation that creators established, the creation school really for us to co-create. I was, even though I tell people like I'm conscious, I do all these things and, all this other stuff, I'm still in the operation mode of operating against creation. And so as I operate against creation, I operate against life. And that means that, more people die, more people collectively, let's think about this. If we're creating a lot of this stuff collectively, then pretty much all of us are going against creation by every little aspect and thing that we do in our life. So of course we're going to go against life, and we're not going to have health, and we're probably going to, be eradicated. And, there's a story, that I tell people too, because I don't believe like stories are stories. I actually believe that they're the truth. And so there's a Cherokee story, and I'm not the best, and I apologize if I botch it, but I'm just going to get to kind of like the points, the PowerPoints. But back, and this story took place when the Native people made the original contracts with the animals. And they mostly ate, plants. They ate pretty much a lot of their diet was plants. And then there was this point where they had like a drought or something, and they didn't have a lot of plants to live. And the animals, came forward. The deer was the head of the council, and the bear. And they came forward and said, look, you can eat us. But we only want you to take what you need. So if you, like next year you don't have a drought and you have lots of plants to eat, please be reminded that that's what you should be eating, and only, take our lives when you really, 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 really need to. So that was the contract that was made. And so the Native people, whenever they needed food to feed their children, or they needed clothing or whatever else that they needed, then they would, do the sacred way, and they would, go to the animal and do the ceremonies. And then what animal wanted to come forth to help them, to sacrifice their life, would come forward and present themselves so that the natives knew who, was going to service their families. And so, and then they would take great honor in the animal and the taking of its life, and making sure that its spirit kept on in a good way, that it would come back. So what happened was that when the cultures of the takers started to infiltrate, there was a period where they were killing everything. And this went against the agreement that the animals made with the Native nations. And there was nothing that the Native nations could do about this, right? Because they also were in the process of also being murdered and massacred and removed from being part of the original contracts and balance. So the deer and the bear got really, really angry, and they went to the Creator, and they just said, hey, look, we've got some issues. We've got some problems with what is going on, and we don't want to participate in it. Like, the original contracts were this, and now it's exploding, and we have these, humans that are killing everything for no rhyme or reason, and it's just not good. So the Creator said, well, what do you want to do about it? What is it that you basically want to, apply? What do you want to do? You guys want to leave this reality and, all deer and bear go extinct, and you guys can go back to your home worlds and not participate with the humans anymore because, you don't really feel like they're upholding their end of the deal. How do you want to deal with it? So the deer and bear go away for a while, and they go talk to all the other, beings, and they come back and they said, okay, well, we reached an agreement. And the Creator said, okay, well, what's the agreement? And they said, well, we want them to basically, have problems with their bodies to slow them down so that they can't hunt us, that it makes it more difficult for them to do what they're doing. And so basically it was the curse of rheumatism, right? The rheumatism type disease, the degenerative diseases of the body that slow the body down, like the Tin Man when he's all seized up because he's rusted, right? He can't move or anything. He's in there and he's like, and then they grease him up, and then he can talk and move his mouth and his hands. So that was kind of like what they wanted to do, was slow down the takers. So people will have a tendency to end up in more, and this is just, what I've found along the way, because, we're not co-creating in this world like we should be. We're not really learning from what's left of these natural places and these 100% sustainability places, these forested areas that don't need us, that are pretty sustainable. And so, when I deal with a lot of the clients and people I have, a lot of the physical pain, they're carrying could be from, older places in their life where they were major takers. They weren't helpers. So I don't even look at it as being a giver, because I think that has its own set of illnesses, right? Because you're creating that chemistry in your brain. If you're like, unselfless or whatever else, there's a complete total imbalance there. But I believe with the taker, the other end of it is the helper, and learning to co-create. And that's how, really on a highly spiritual level, that you can eradicate pain, and you can start living more in nature, and then you start to absorb all of those silent nutrients that are in nature, which also, guess what, help to heal your body. And alleviate a lot of the illnesses and problems that you have. So let's see, what else should I blab on about? I'm still drinking my coffee, so I'm still not completely awake. Let's see, we could talk about, so an interesting thing that happened, and I kind of briefly talked about it when I did the show with Ralph Ring and Marsha Brown, which I'm so excited they're going to be coming back on July 6th. And maybe Ralph will talk to us all things Tesla and car. Would be very exciting. But anyway, it was the Mullen, and it was a crazy story, but it shows this story kind of shows a little bit of my impatience, right? Which is like, okay, I'm on a time schedule and, I've got to get this stuff done and processed. And I probably wouldn't have been so extreme if I hadn't have to have it for school. And because it had to cure for a minimum of 2 weeks, I had all these timelines, go to school like once a month, for several days, and then, spend the next 3 weeks trying to sort out, how you're going to develop this kind of medicine that you're choosing to make so that you have something to present that shows that, you did it and what you learned from it and how you made it and blah, 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 blah. So you can, maneuver towards your ultimate grade. And so what had happened with mullein, it's kind of an interesting story, was I had to go out and collect the mullein root because I had been reading in some really old articles that they called it the bone aligner. And I'm really, because I am living in the desert, I'm in a basin right below the Sierra Nevadas, a lot of the ski resorts, Squaw, Mount Rose, but I'm on the desert side, I'm on the Nevada side. So there are areas where, it might be a little bit lusher to collect plants, but I'm sure it's not in a forest. I'm not like in Northern California where I have, fairyland where I have unlimited plants. And so I really wanted to focus in on native plants and plants that were, strong healers and grew prolifically, because the other issues that I have with making medicine is that the soil needs those plants. The water needs those plants. The insects need those plants. Other plants need those plants. The animals need those plants. The birds need those plants. And so, there's this hierarchy which is above me. And I don't want to go into an environment and take all of the plants because I have to make a tincture that was there. That's just not going to work for me because I would be part of killing the ecology. I'd be part of killing and harming those other beings that live in the environment, or like water. Water in the desert, in order for the sand to saturate properly, it needs plants with roots in it, because those roots help to funnel the water into deeper levels of the ground. And especially in the desert, when you have whole areas that even sagebrush and whatever else has been removed, now it just floods over and creates huge, areas where the water, flows through, and it creates ridges and its own waterways, when you have too much water that goes through, because the water can't be maneuvered and funneled down back into the aquifers, right? Because there's no roots that penetrate those areas that actually can help the water to pool around the plants and then travel down the roots into the ground. So plants are a super important part of the system and the refilling of our aquifers, unfortunately. And this is why we're losing more and more fresh water, and less fresh water is being absorbed into our environment, because we have whole areas that don't have plants in them. We have whole areas that have concrete and pavement and all these other things, and we filter the water, funnel it into other ways. A lot of these towns and cities that are close to the ocean, funneling, all of that rainwater back into the ocean, and not, refortifying the underground aquifers, because there's no plants, and there's no nature in order to pull the water and to funnel it back into using the roots. So when I go out and I have to look at these areas and where I'm going to collect this plant medicine, I want plants that are prolific, because I don't want to have to, I'm not going to take plants that there aren't enough for everything else and me, and to make medicines to help people. And I'm not going to destroy the ecology or the environment by taking plants that there aren't enough of. And so these are other, things that have to play out when I go out. And on top of, finding the right days and being in the right place and the right mind and the right space to go out and, have a journey with the plant, and then take the plant, harvesting the plant and doing all the good work, and then getting to the place where, then I take the plant down and I chop it up, or, do all the different things to it to make the medicine that I'm going to make, and then to the medicine that I'm holding at the end of the day, and where that medicine is, and keeping it protected from people's thoughts and their chemicals and, Wi-Fi and radiation and a lot of this other stuff. So I really, really try to honor the whole process from start to finish, and really make sure that my medicines aren't coming in contact with a lot of other energies, like in doctors' offices or homeopaths, where that stuff's sitting on the shelves for a long period of time, and every person that walks in there is impacting that medicine, and it's probably not in a good way. So I like to keep everything as clean as possible. So anyway, when I went out with the mullein, and I had to go, it took me all over the outlining areas around Reno. I went in all 4 directions. And then at the last, after 8 hours, over 2 days of tromping around and hiking and looking, mullein sent me everywhere. It sent me to go find, it wanted me to see where there was this yarrow patch, right? Where there was this huge area of yarrow that, it was an area that I'd been to before, and I had no idea, because it knew that I was going to be working with the yarrow, and it wanted to help me to find it, and find it in a way that it was in a good way, that I could harvest what I needed, and I still left plenty for the environment and all the other beings. And then it took me to find horsetail, and actually I think it might be tomorrow I'm going to go out and harvest horsetail, and it just mullein cared to. Even though I was mad and I was irritated about this whole thing, I was like, can we just get to the point where the mullein that I need to harvest is going to be this mullein root, and, I can get it processed, and I'm cranky and tired, and I just want to get this done. And mullein taught me that it's about making friends, right? It's about, ringy-ding-ding on a mental level with mullein, and being like, hey, dude, like, how's it going? Great. Hey, I know we have something to do today, but hey, can we drive out and meet with the yarrow? I want to take you to some friends of mine's house. And then, hey, tomorrow, I think I'd like to take you over to, my pals, the horsetail. They want to meet you too, and build a relationship. And we want to help you, because we think that, you're working in a good way. And so we want to make this easy on you, and we want to teach you some things. And so mullein took me all over. It already had known the plants that I was going to be using next. It already knew the type of work, and pain and inflammation and different types of things that it already knew where to take me. And so the thing about working as a co-creator is that all I have to do is relax and learn how to be a co-creator instead of a destroyer. And the plants and the environment will show me the way. Will be the educator, will help me, to create, to co-create within the creation. And I hear a lot of people, and I've lived in lots of different places, lots of different spiritual people, and studied all kinds of different spiritual processes, and the whole, manifesta or manifesting and all this other stuff. I think it's so, more and more, I think it's like so self-driven, because, you want to manifest, something that is going to harm. You're going to want to manifest a certain kind of lifestyle that is going to harm something or someone, and ultimately not be part of co-creating the healing of this planet and the original creation that was designed for you to eat from, to gain your medicine from, to live in, that has all of the important nutrients that you need to actually live a long time, to have longevity, to have peace of mind, to have help and health and less stress and clean air. And, I think about this climax forest that I was in last weekend, and it has these beautiful babbling brooks that go through it, and there's old trees that have fallen over into the creek and how it's reformed itself, and there's this mist that's developing from this water and the oxygenation that's happening as a process of it babbling through, and how it's rising in around the trees, and just how that air was with all of that oxygen in there. And then you'd have these little sunbeams that would come down to areas, and specifically, and they would cultivate certain plants in those areas, and how clean it was. And I think about, like, even though it's a climax area, it's perfection, and it's sustainable, and it doesn't need anything or anyone, right? It's doing everything that it needs itself and together. It still isn't as pristine that I'm sure at some point in time large, places here were. And but I know why we're sick, I know why we're ultimately have poor health. And I know that no roads that we're going down that go away from nature. And this is the other thing too, healing machines, they're putting out a frequency. How do you think that stuff is getting to you? It's a signal. And that inevitably is going to kill microbes as well, as it's going into your body to help you to heal the cancer. And so it's a short-term thing. And you're going to constantly have to rely on these things outside of yourself to have health, when the key is getting back to the land. The key is, working the land. The key is restoring the land. The whole process is restoring the microbial mass, because you are the soil. The soil is you. You are the compost. And this is kind of a quick story before we end, and thanks for listening today. You're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. I'm Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I am guesting my own show today. But at one point in time, I used to go to a man, Dr. Harvey, and he was the best black field hemo. He used a dark field microscope to look at blood, dark field hematologist. And he also, had been, a medical doctor, like over 50 years. He did triage in Vietnam. He worked in hospitals and eventually became, pretty 100% alternative, and became one of the top dark field hematologists. He could look at the microbial levels of your blood and diagnose every possible thing that was wrong with you. And then help you to clean those areas up. He very much also, too, believed in structural medicine. That's exactly one of the number one things that I do, so that the brain could, pick up the areas of the body, and that the spine worked as a hydraulic pump, and also help to, open and close the diaphragms, which are your, the chakras are power generators, kind of a thing. So, but I remember the first time that I actually went to him, and because I really wanted to know if it had been like several years after, my battle of brain cancer. And I just really wanted him to look at the blood and see where I was at with the brain cancer. The good news is that there was no sign of brain cancer. I had done such a fabulous job alternatively, like there was nothing in the microbial mass to indicate in my blood that I had any kind of inflammation or any residue from it. So that was spectacular. But the one thing I did see in my blood they take a pinprick other than, 800 tubes of blood. And then, it's pure. They put it underneath and then they look at it at the dark level. But I'd see these little wormy looking things, And I remember I turned and I looked at him and I said, hey, I must need to do a parasite cleanse. He goes, oh, no, those are microbes like compost. He goes, you need those in your blood. If you don't have them in your blood, you're going to die, because they're not breaking down old stuff and then being put in to be cleaned, and then they use it for good stuff and rebuilding. And so if you don't have those microbes in your blood, you're in serious trouble. And so I think about even a lot of people that are sterile already, and then they're doing a whole bunch of parasite cleanses. I'm not saying that some of them are not needed, but you can sterilize yourself so much that you can kill whatever microbes you have left in your body, and then you're just basically sterile material, and you don't have the basics of life going on anymore. So, we are the soil. The soil is us. And I think even in the Bible it says something, from dust you came and to dust you shall return. Well, and you are dust. You just got to make sure it's good dust. All right, everybody. Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you again next week. Bye.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank or all